Well, howdy there. Well, howdy there, folks. I'm live on Bleacher Report right now. If you're watching this on YouTube, I go live on Bleacher Report every Thursday, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can find me on the Dallas Mavericks. You can find me on the Dallas Mavericks tab on your Bleacher Report app, folks. Come and join us every Thursday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. It's going to be a great offseason, as it was a great season for our Dallas Mavericks. Now, there's one thing that we got to talk about, right? And it does pertain to the Dallas Mavericks. And it does, regardless of whether you want to discuss it or not, is the fact that the Los Angeles Lakers lost in round one of the playoffs last night. And look, here's the reality of the situation at hand, folks. I'm a petty guy. I am, right? And I try not to be, and I try. Everyone eats, everyone. But there's deep down, and I'm not as petty as I used to be. But deep down, I'm still King Petty. And there was a little bit of a smile. That's it, just a little smirk, and not because I don't like anyone or this or that, but man, like, what did the Lakers do to deserve this? Right? That's where I've been at. What did they do to deserve Luka Doncic? That's really what it boils down to. But of course, piggybacking off of the Lakers' embarrassing first-round loss, you've gotten some takes that have come out, and of course, the ones that I would tell you to ignore, but I'm going to talk about it just because it is a segue into stuff I do want to talk about. You have Kendrick Perkins. Folks, we call him Babbling Perk. He just babbles. We don't quite know what he's saying, really. It's quite tremendous. He just talks and babbles. We call him Babbling Perk. He had to go on, this is a 4.5 minute video, so I'm not showing you this, but he went on First Take this morning and said basically that Nico was correct in doing this trade, which obviously is a preposterous thing to do. Is not right under really any circumstances. Now, look, if you want to go this route, if you are somebody who wants to do the whole, oh, well, maybe Nico had a point. The reality is we won't know the final answer to that question for years, right? That's just it. If the Mavericks were to, and I don't even think there's a way for the Mavericks to win the trade, by the way, but if a scenario were to play out where it's like, hey, you know what? That actually ended up not being as bad as we thought for the Mavericks. We won't know that until 4, 5, 6 years down the line. There's no way one postseason run will make a difference there. And I've kind of mentioned this before. I mentioned this after the trade, is that we've seen this. We've seen this play out with the Mavericks. We saw this play out when the Mavericks traded for Kyrie Irving. That when you make gigantic midseason trades like this, more often than not, probably 95% of the time, you're probably going to, it's going to be a little disappointing as you try to put the pieces together and figure out how you're going to mesh together as a team, because you just don't have a lot of time and you're going up against teams that have plenty of continuity. You look at the Mavericks last year. Yeah, they made the finals after 2 big deadline trades, but they brought in Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington, not guys who like completely and totally changed the identity of the team. The Lakers are a completely different basketball team than they were on January 30th. The Mavericks were a completely different basketball team than they were on January 30th. Same thing before the Kyrie Irving trade. I'm trying to think of some other like big time trades that sort of think about the Suns with Kevin Durant. Obviously, I mean, that didn't really work out at all, but you think about, a trade like that. These things typically take time. So no, I don't think the Lakers losing early in round one is a sign that Nico Harrison was correct. And I'm going to get to some more reasons here coming up. Not a sign at all that Nico Harrison was correct. I also think that, I think I've landed where I've landed with this all. And I'm using the Lakers losing. I'm using the trade. I'm using these as just a jump off point to talk about other stuff. But where I've landed with the trade in a lot of ways is, okay, if you really set me down and just chipped away. Look, man, it's hard. It's hard when, and I thought Luka was dreadful defensively in this series. Just thought he was horrible. It's difficult. It's very difficult to build around a guy who is not that good on defense that consistently. Right? It's difficult when your 25-year-old star is dealing with these nagging, lingering injuries that we're growing more and more concerned about. I am concerned. I've talked about all of this ad nauseum before the trade that I was concerned about the direction Luka's body was headed in. Not from a shape standpoint, but from a injury standpoint. That it was growing alarming to me that a 25-year-old was dealing with some of the stuff that Luka was consistently dealing with. the reality is one, I would still never in a million years trade that guy. But also two, the package in return was absolutely dreadful. So that's why it'll never be a successful trade. That's why I don't think no matter what, Nico will never be right. Even if Luka's tenure on the Lakers ends up not working. Even if Luka's tenure on the Lakers ends up being disappointing. Even if all of the concerns that you had with Luka that led to you getting traded, that led to him getting traded, that led to you deciding it was time to make the trade. Even if all of those things end up becoming a real glaring problem, let's just say, knock on wood, Luka consistently deals with these nagging, lingering injuries over the next 5 or 6 years, and it just sort of derails his career, or it prevents him from getting to where he needs to be, or he doesn't have that moment. That moment doesn't happen for him where he's just like, all right, you know what? I don't know if I can say it on Bleacher Report. Fuck, hookah, fuck all of that. I'm locking in now. Like, I'm locking in, and we're going to show up. We're going to be in shape, and I'm going to be ready to go for 40 minutes a night, beginning to end. You don't have to worry about me in the fourth quarter of games. You don't have to worry about me in April. I'm going to be good and ready to go. Now, if he doesn't reach that point, right, that's I doubt it. This will be an interesting summer for Luka. I'm not even here to talk about Luka, really, because I want to talk about the Mavericks and this idea that, Nico Harrison was right. Why it's preposterous, because I actually think that this postseason and some of the stuff we're seeing from this postseason, it's bad news for the Mavericks. Okay, there's been some lessons, and there's lessons that we learn. I'm using this lessons that we learn in the playoffs every single year that aren't new, but you do kind of forget it, especially if you're somebody who is a sicko, and just watches as much NBA basketball as possible. Just tuned in on November Charlotte versus Indiana game on a random Tuesday night in November. There's stuff that you kind of forget over the course of a regular season. And then when the playoffs start, it's like, oh my God. Like, take, for example, I live in Dallas, Texas. Obviously, it's scorching hot. It's hot as hell, literally, and figuratively, but mostly literally, pretty much every single summer. And yet, it gets hot. But then once it gets there, once summer comes and it's August and you're outside, you're like, damn, I just forgot how hot it actually gets. That's how I feel about physicality in the playoffs. Is like, we do know it gets more physical in the playoffs. We know that there's sort of a level that the referees kind of allow you to get to, even though there are more foul calls. There's more foul calls because defenses are just so much more physical. And we know there's a different level of locked in and physicality that teams tap into once the postseason starts. You always kind of forget. You always kind of forget until it happens. Now, for the Dallas Mavericks, I would say that's actually a good thing. That's lesson number one. Lesson number one that we can take away from this postseason so far is just how physical these games are. You tune into any series, any first round series that we have seen, with the exception of the sad, pathetic Miami Heat and what they did against the Cavaliers. You tune into pretty much every single series, and you just see a level of physicality that is on another level. And the teams that cannot match that physicality are going to struggle and are more than likely going to lose early. That's what we saw in the Lakers and Timberwolves series. I mean, you look at it and it's, how can Luka, LeBron, how can this Lakers team lose in round one? Well, it's because, there was a level of physicality that the Lakers were just not able to achieve. There was athleticism, a level of athleticism, an athleticism gap the Lakers were not able to close. There was a size gap the Lakers were not able to close. You look at the Dallas Mavericks roster in their current form, right? And they're going to make moves. Make no mistake about that. They're going to be a team that is booked and busy this offseason, yes, as they usually are. You look at the roster in their current form, and I do think defensively, at the very least, this is a team that could perform pretty well in the playoffs, assuming they are healthy. You just go up and down the roster, right? I know that Anthony Davis is going to be a good defensive player in the playoffs. I've seen Anthony Davis be a tremendous championship caliber center, and I still think we're close enough to that peak from Anthony Davis. He's on the back end of the slope for his career, but I do think that we're still getting a great Anthony Davis on a night in and night out basis. I know Anthony Davis can perform in a postseason setting defensively. I know that he can be an anchor defensively. I saw Derek Lively. I mean, it's interesting looking at this series, Lakers Timberwolves. One of the things that people kept talking about in the lead up to the series was, well, we saw Luka do X, Y, and Z against the Timberwolves last year. We saw Luka do X, Y, and Z against the Timberwolves last year. Really was just a terrible way to look at this series, because the Lakers don't have anybody who comes remotely close to what Derek Lively provides. to a basketball team. And it literally made me want to rip my beautiful hair out, and it just made my eye twitch, and it made my head hurt whenever I would see anyone even come close to insinuating that Jackson Hayes, who's one of the worst players I've ever seen, God bless him, that Jackson Hayes was capable of doing similar things to Derek Lively. I know Derek Lively's a playoff guy. I watched him have an incredible performance against this Minnesota Timberwolves team a year ago. I saw him dominate the Oklahoma City Thunder a year ago. Yes, Derek Lively needs a point guard offensively. Yes, Derek Lively benefits from a guy like Luka Doncic very much so. But I saw Derek Lively play really well in the playoffs, and I'm confident in that. You got other guys up and down the roster. I know P.J. Washington's a good postseason defensive guy. Why do I know that? Because P.J. Washington is a very physical defender. So when the playoffs come around and more physicality is allowed, I mean, you watch a series like this Minnesota LA series. I mean, just the physicality that Minnesota displayed against LeBron at times in this series, just going at it, preventing post-ups, preventing LeBron from, getting a seal or getting a mismatch that he wants. Just the physicality was just so intense. We know P.J. Washington can handle that. We know that that's something that he's capable of. So defensively, we know Caleb Martin can be a good playoff defender because a lot of the same reasons I just said, a physical defender. Defensively, I do see the vision with this group. I know their end of season numbers were pretty rough for the Mavericks. I think they had a 105 defensive rating when Anthony Davis was on the floor. I mean, that's a good number, right? I've sort of mentioned this before, that the Mavs to be a great basketball team, a championship caliber team, that's what they want to be. In order for them to be that, their defense can't be good. It has to be elite. It has to be top 3. Like that's, I think, where we're at. It has to be a top 3 defense. Anything more, anything less will not cut it, because the big problems for you, and I'm going to get to them here in a bit, and it's why I think this postseason's actually been kind of alarming if you look at the Dallas Mavericks roster and probably where it's going to end up. But why did I think the Mavericks had a 105 defensive rating when Anthony Davis was on the floor? Why was that being said to me? The Mavericks had a 114 defensive rating when Anthony Davis was on the court. That's not very good. That's not very good. That's not really good at all, actually. That's like teetering around middle of the pack defensively. Just for frame of reference, Thunder 107 defensive rating, the best in the NBA this season. That's where defense does win championships. That's where the Mavs need to be. They need to be towards the top of the league. And, I know some of their end of season stuff, like if we were just to pull up the Mavs defensive rating since the trade deadline, I know it was pretty terrible. Let's just go since March 1st. I know it was pretty terrible, but I don't really take any of these defensive numbers seriously at all. Guys were in and out the lineup, and you had guys who played like 30 minutes together total. The Mavericks were 26th in defense from March 1st onwards. But you look at this group, though, assuming that they're healthy, which is a lot to ask, but I do see a team that I think could perform well defensively. I think you have your anchor in Anthony Davis. I think you have another strong big in Derek Lively, one who, you watch and you see guys, bigger players in postseason settings who can get hunted, can get targeted, can get played off the court, even though over the course of the regular season that's not the case. It's just because offenses hone in on weaknesses so much, and this has become this has been a problem with like Rudy Gobert throughout his career, although Rudy Gobert I thought was tremendous in that Lakers series. The thing that is so great about Derek Lively, I think, is his ability to guard on the perimeter. It really is special for a player his age, as young and as inexperienced as he is at his size. It is truthfully a special thing. So the Mavericks can have this versatility defensively where we can have one big. We can have Anthony Davis just sort of being the rim protector, and we feel decent about him on the perimeter. We can have, if Anthony Davis is off the floor, we can have Derek Lively as the lone big, and we feel good about him. We can put those two together, and we're kind of confident in both of them holding their own on the perimeter, and we just have this physical, ginormous front court that can protect the rim, that can rebound the basketball. And when we go up against smaller teams, like if, for example, a team like the Lakers, who just does not have a playable big, we can obliterate them on the glass. Like, look at what the Timberwolves were able to do in that closeout game. Rudy Gobert had 27 and 20. I think I'm actually short selling him. Wasn't it 27 and 24? 27 and 24. So all of that, I can squint and I can see it. Like, you have problems with who's going to handle a guy like Anthony Edwards, for example. The Mavs don't really have a guy on their roster. The Lakers didn't either, and it was a big problem. That's something that probably needs to be addressed in the offseason. But here's the problem, and here's why all of this. Well, Nico was right. Nico was right, despite the fact that the Mavericks did not make the playoffs. That was a lot of that was due to injury. I struggle to see this group in their current form having enough to be able to realistically compete for a championship. And I think beyond that, I struggle to imagine how they can even realistically get there. And that's even if Kyrie Irving comes back and is healthy next season. If you get Kyrie Irving in January and he's like 90% of what he was this year, that's like a best case scenario. I still struggle because I look around at this postseason so far. I look around at some of these series. I look around at some of the teams that have lost, some of the teams that are losing, and even some of the teams that maybe advance but are struggling a little bit, or are going to advance and are struggling a little bit. And I wonder, where is the offense going to come from this Dallas Mavericks group? Where is this offense going to, where are we going to get this offense? Because you need creators. You need more than one option. You need more than two options. And realistically, you need more than like three reliable options. I mean, I hate going back to the Timberwolves and Lakers series, but I'm going to keep doing it because there's a lot you can take away from this series. Look at it. Look at the Lakers. A lot of the Lakers talks to me about rebounding, which was obviously, I think, problem number one, realistically. The fact that their roster wasn't deep enough and they had to just burn their guys to the ground, also a huge problem. But this kind of speaks more to my point. Austin Reeves was a guy who most improved player buzz. Austin Reeves was a guy who people were calling the best third option in the NBA. And not even he was consistent enough and reliable enough to make a real legitimate difference in this series. And his poor shooting, his inability to create for himself off the dribble against real legitimate perimeter defenders, which he really struggled with in this series, was a huge reason why the Lakers lost this series in 5 games. I mean, a massive reason, right? Luka and LeBron weren't enough. And then on the flip side, you look at Minnesota, Anthony Edwards had a tremendous series. I thought he was the best player in the series by a comfortable margin. Julius Randle had a tremendous series. He was so good. But then you had Jaden McDaniels, who was consistently attacking mismatches, had a couple of big scoring nights. You had Naz Reid come off the bench, had a few big scoring nights and some really big buckets down the stretch. I look at this Mavericks roster, and yeah, I feel pretty good about what I'm getting from Kyrie. Yeah, I feel decent about what I'm going to get offensively from Anthony Davis. Outside of that, I don't feel good at all, right? And especially the further you get in the playoffs, or the better teams that you face that can hone in on these guys that feel like, hey, we've got the perimeter defenders. We've got the lengthy athletes. We've got the guys who can move around, who we feel good that we can contain Kyrie, at least contain him a little bit. And, we'll double Anthony Davis. We'll make it to where he can't get, we'll front him. We'll prevent post-ups. We'll do whatever it takes. We'll force Anthony Davis to live on the perimeter and shoot 18-foot jumpers. We're okay with that. Who else is going to score for this Mavericks team consistently? Because the guy that you had to spoon feed the roll guys, the lob threats, the perimeter-oriented catch-and-shoot guys, or catch-and-shoot or rip-and-go guys like P.J. Washington. That's really what he excels at. Who's going to spoon feed these guys? That guy's gone. I struggle to imagine where is that offense going to come from, because the deeper you go into the playoffs, and again, remember, this trade was made, and the selling point was that it's championship, win now, defense wins championships. This is our window, 2 to 3 years. So it's not like, yeah, I mean, if the Mavericks make it, their defense is good enough, they can make it to the second round. Like, that's not cutting it. It has to be championship or nothing. And just look around at the first round series. One of the big things, and this always is true in the postseason, but one of the big things here, half-court offense since the trade deadline. 8 of the top 10 teams in half-court offense made the playoffs. Out of the 8 teams that were outside of the top 10, only 2 are still playing. Only 2. The rest have been eliminated, or are on the brink of elimination in the Houston Rockets case. The reality is if you can't consistently get a bucket late in the game, if you can't consistently find offense late in the game from not just your first guy, not just your second guy, but your third guy, your fourth guy, your role guys are consistent offensively, you're really going to struggle to win in a postseason setting. This is not a new lesson. This isn't new. We've known all of this forever. It's one of the reasons why when the Mavs make the playoffs, even if they're struggling, even if the record's not great, even if they were a 5th seed or a 6th seed, you always felt pretty good about them in the playoffs because it's like, well, I feel pretty good when the game slows down that they can go get buckets and they can go score. I think that's going to become more of a problem for you as we enter next season. And now it's difficult to imagine how this offense gets to a point where it's good enough in a half-court setting that you're scoring enough points to win not just playoff games, not just playoff series, but 3 playoff series. Do you get what I'm saying? So this whole like Nico was right because the Lakers lose in round 1. Yeah, of course. As somebody who thinks that it's absolutely bullshit that the Lakers got Luka Doncic, because what have they done as a franchise to deserve that? Nothing really. Look at their roster. Nothing. Okay? So, yeah, part of me does find it a little bit funny, but it doesn't mean Nico is right. In fact, like I think everything we're seeing this postseason kind of proves Nico's point wrong. You got to have offense. You got to have consistent, reliable offense. And what's funny about the Lakers losing is you look at their numbers from the trade onwards, they were an okay defensive team. And look, if you watched them at all, you knew all of those defensive metrics. They were the best defense for a couple of months. You knew all of that was so fraudulent if you just watched them play. But their defensive numbers were good. Their offense was middle of the road. They're one of the teams I mentioned that was outside of the top 10 in half-court offense, which doesn't really make sense considering their personnel. But, you know, you bring in Luka Doncic, you got to figure all of this stuff out. It's new. It's guys learning new roles, learning how to play off one another. And they lose because, yeah, the rebounding was bad. They had big mental lapses defensively. But really what it was is their offense just collapsed, especially late in games. Their offense was horrible in the series. The Lakers' offense was dreadful late in games of this series. Credit to the Timberwolves, but the Lakers just could not go out and get a bucket. And that's why they lost the series. And I look at this Mavericks team, which, yeah, we'll see some changes. They'll for sure go and get a guard. I don't know who it's going to be, but they'll for sure go and get a guard, a ball handler, something in the offseason. And unless it's an absolute robbery of a trade, unless you get incredibly lucky in the draft and move up and get like a Dylan Harper or just draft a demon and that just comes in and is an immediate impact player for you, chances are low for that. Or, you know, it's like I'm trying to think of a free agent signing that's just like kind of like a Malik Beasley situation. I'm not saying a type of player like Malik Beasley, but you just go out and bring him in without thinking much of it, and it turns out being an incredible player for you. Unless there's something like that, I just struggle to see where they're going to get the offense to be a real, legitimate championship contending team. And keep in mind, that's what they did the trade for. So if you want to do the look at the Lakers, look at how they lost this game, Nico is right thing, look at the Mavericks roster. They made that trade and they sold a dream to the fans that this was a championship contending roster immediately. I really struggle to see how they get there offensively. I struggle to see how they consistently generate offense with this group. I just do. I struggle. You look at the Clippers-Nuggets series. What can we learn from that series if we're the Mavericks? Well, it is nice to have the best player on the planet on your team. You know, there's been a lot of talk recently that the star era of the league has kind of ended. Like needing the best player on the court in a series, that's sort of ended, and it's been replaced with the weakest link era. You don't want to have the weakest link on the floor at any given time. You look at the teams that I think are probably the top 3 when it comes to championship odds, Thunder, Celtics, and Cavs. You look at those teams, and they're incredibly deep. They can put out 5-man lineups that just basically everyone can do anything, and nobody's really weak at anything in particular. And that is true. And I look at this Mavericks team, and I think they could put out 5-man lineups that are pretty interesting in that regard. But you look at the Clippers and Nuggets series, I do think the Clippers are a better team than the Nuggets. They've been a much better team than the Nuggets over the past few months. Their roster is deeper. They have more guys. They have more things they can throw at Denver. But Denver has the best player on the planet. And he's played like the best player on the planet during this series. And now they're up 3-2 with a chance to win it. So it's another thing, right? I'm looking at this. And once you trade away Luka, you've sort of forfeited that. You have forfeited that possibility. Does that make sense? Because, look, I think Anthony Davis is a really, really good player. And I feel badly for him, the way that this has all played out. And he's been disrespected in the process. But as a go-to number one guy, you know, I don't feel over the course of a 7-game series, like, can Anthony Davis match fire with, we've seen it, but can Anthony Davis go, you know, bar for bar with Nikola Jokic? Like, I don't think so. If Anthony Edwards were to pop off and score 43 points in a game, am I confident Anthony Davis can match that consistently? Not really. No. Kyrie Irving coming off of an ACL tear? No, not really. We've seen Kyrie have struggles in the playoffs at times. We've seen Kyrie be incredible in the playoffs. Don't get me wrong. We've also seen him go up against matchups where he can be completely and totally neutralized. So that's again, Nico was right. They've built a championship roster where I feel like you have your two top guys could be game planned out of the game. The guy you just traded, all of his flaws factored into the equation, which there are a lot. Like that, I'll just be honest, there are, right? I thought in that series, Luka was terrible defensively. Fourth quarter, he was dreadful offensively. I think his offensive impact, you have to just look beyond the box score numbers. I don't think he was that great for Luka standards. That just goes to show how great Luka is. But still, there's not much you can do to limit that guy. Bad back, sick, weird season, conditioning never got right because of injuries. He still had a pretty good scoring series. He still had, especially if you take out the flu game, an efficient series from the field. You've lost that. So I think you're defensively, you're doing things that are interesting enough to like win a series or two. Can this group be good enough offensively to win at the highest level in the playoffs? What do you think, Nico? What do you think, buddy? Shh. Let me talk. These playoffs are showing that while defense does make you win championships, you got to be able to put the ball in the hoop. That's right. As Uncle Drew once said, this game is about a bucket. As Bill Russell once said, this game has been and will always be about a bucket. The Houston Rockets are on the brink of elimination. One of the best defensive teams in the league this season. On the brink of elimination. They just don't generate enough offense. That's just the reality. The Orlando Magic thought they really actually did a pretty damn good job on the Celtics defensively. You know? Like, I know Celtics fans who are like, damn, that Magic team's tough. They can't score to save their lives. You know what? They might not be able to hit the broadside of a barn. They might not be able to hit water out of a boat. They lose in 5 games. The Miami Heat, well, they're just terrible, and they shouldn't be in the playoffs. They need to redo the play-in tournament. The Miami Heat have no business. We have no business being subjected to 7 games, or thank God, only 4 games of Miami Heat basketball. They need to rethink it. They need to redo it. I mean, even you look at a team like the Thunder, the best defense in the league this season, one of the best defenses, regular season defenses, at least we've ever seen. Offensively, from March 1st onwards, they were the best offense in the league. I just don't know where you're going to get this offense from. And even if the Mavericks defense ends up being top 3 next year, which again, it's going to have to be for them to be competitive, because I do not think their offense is going to be anywhere near good enough. Your offense has to at least be good. Maybe not great, maybe not elite, but it has to at least be good. It has to at least be top 10 level good. And I just don't know. You know, these playoffs have shown us that. Yeah, these defensive teams that are good defensively and they do X, Y, and Z, but they can't score, they lose in the playoffs. They lose almost always. It's not like a new lesson. It's just a reminder. These teams lose frequently in the playoffs. You have to be able to put the ball in the hoop. You have to be able to score. You have to be able to shoot the three-pointer. Guess what this Mavericks team's not good at? Shooting threes, even generating threes. So I know there's this like, oh, maybe Nico was right. Maybe I see it. No, he wasn't. And you want to know why? It's not because he decided to trade Luka Doncic. Because you know what? Hey, maybe there's a universe that exists where you could talk somebody into that. We've heard podcasts and people be like, hey, I talked to a league guy and he's like, yeah, I kind of understand trading Luka, but you traded Luka with the goal being we're not getting young guys, we're not getting picks, we're trying to win right now, and your team's not good enough, and everything we've seen in the playoffs so far, I feel like is a bad sign for you, because offensively, where the hell are you getting buckets? Babbling Perk.